They fired me at 9:42 a.m. At 9:47, they deleted my repos. At 9:53, the CTO posted a Slack announcement claiming legacy code cleanup was underway, like I hadn't spent 9 years building the backbone of their entire damn platform. But the real punchline came at 10:06, when I got the calendar invite I wasn't supposed to see: acquisition readiness, final technical review with Falcon Capital. $350 million. That was the number they'd been salivating over for months. The number they fired me 3 weeks before closing to avoid paying me my equity tranche. The number they thought they could secure without the guy who architected every core system from version 1.0 to the present day. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the exit email still warm in my inbox, and I actually laughed out loud. They had no idea what they'd just detonated. Because while they were busy celebrating the fact that my account access was gone, none of them knew something far more important. I was the one who held the continuity documentation, the only complete technical lineage of the system, the only map through the forest of proprietary logic they treated like just code. And the funniest part? They'd been warned. Every quarter, I'd reminded them, if you're going to sell the company, you need a clean, validated chain of custody on the platform. Every quarter, they ignored me. So when they fired me, they didn't just remove the architect. They removed the only person who could legally certify the system for acquisition. And the buyer was about to find that out. I sat in my car long after HR finished their little ceremony, termination meeting, they called it, as if it were sacred, and watched the building through the windshield. It still amazed me how casually they'd done it. No warning. No discussion. No thanks for 7 years of building the back-end system that kept their entire platform alive. Just a 30-minute Zoom with an HR rep who sounded like she was reading from a script written by someone who had never been fired before. But what got me wasn't the firing itself. It was what happened after. Because not even 12 minutes later, someone on the engineering Slack, someone who thought I'd already lost access, screenshotted a message from the CTO. I knew his writing style instantly: arrogant, clipped, and allergic to vowels. Delete all legacy code. Migration must be clean before acquisition deadline. Legacy code. He meant my code. The heartbeat of the entire system. The same code that the acquiring company had made a non-negotiable requirement in the term sheet. I leaned back in my seat, almost laughing. They had no idea what they'd done. No idea how intertwined my work was, how deeply it ran beneath their shiny new layers. They thought they could rip out the foundation and keep the skyscraper standing because the new engineers want a fresh environment. I unlocked my laptop. Not to sabotage. Not to plan anything. I didn't need to. What I built was already booby-trapped, not intentionally, but by design, because the system required sequential, authenticated custodial handoff. Without the departing architect, me, formally transferring domain keys and confirming system integrity, the acquiring company would detect a compromised architecture. And per the acquisition contract, any material deviation from represented technical assets triggered an automatic evaluation halt. All I had to do was nothing. And nothing was the one thing the company couldn't afford. The VP of engineering fired me at 9:02 a.m. By 9:14, they deleted my entire repository. By 9:30, I realized they had no idea what they'd just done. The CEO thought this acquisition, $350 million in cash and shares from a West Coast conglomerate, was already locked in. He'd been bragging about it for weeks, walking around the office like a man who had already bought his second yacht. Every investor call ended with the same line: our proprietary back-end infrastructure is the jewel of this acquisition. Except I was the one who built that infrastructure. Every line. Every dependency. Every undocumented core function. And they fired me without asking a single question. When HR marched me into the conference room with the fake ferns and the malfunctioning air vent, they tried to make it sound routine, transitioning to a more scalable senior engineering direction, restructuring pre-acquisition, thank you for your service. Then the VP of engineering added, your access has already been revoked, and your code has been backed up. We'll take it from here. He said it smugly, like code was a bunch of IKEA furniture he could reassemble with a YouTube tutorial. My code wasn't IKEA furniture. It was a cathedral made of spiderwebs, beautiful, strong, and impossible to understand unless you knew where every strand was anchored. But what they didn't know, what nobody realized, was that the system had an integrity contract. A simple one. Created because I was tired of cowboy developers breaking things at 2 a.m. and blaming me. Every core module required a validity key. A key generated by a script. A script stored in a private repo. A private repo they thought they deleted. The moment they revoked my credentials, the key expired. And the cathedral went dark. I didn't have to sabotage anything. I didn't touch a server. I didn't alter a byte. Their own ignorance pulled the plug. At 1:17 p.m., my phone buzzed nonstop. First the junior devs. Then 2 directors. Then the COO. By 3 p.m., the CEO himself called. Twice. Then again. I didn't answer. Instead, I opened the acquisition documents. All the conditions. All the guarantees. Condition 4.12, the backend infrastructure must maintain operational integrity with no outages exceeding 45 minutes in any 60-day period. The outage was past 4 hours. Millions in transactions stuck in suspended queues, partners timing out, client dashboards frozen, automated audits screaming bloody murder. At 5:41 p.m., the acquiring company's lawyers filed a material breach notice. The deal went into formal review. The $350 million evaporated like steam on concrete. By 7 p.m., the CEO finally got me on the phone because I allowed it. His voice was cracked, desperate, nothing like the swaggering king of the office. We need you back. Now. Name your price. I let a long silence stretch, long enough for him to hear how small he had become. You deleted the system's only active key, I finally said. You broke it. Not me. Can you fix it? He whispered. Not for you, I replied. But I'll send you an invoice for consulting, if the board approves. My rate starts at $1,200 an hour. Emergency rates apply. He didn't argue. He didn't negotiate. He just swallowed hard and said, send it. Later that week, I heard the acquisition fell through completely. The investors revolted. The CEO stepped down voluntarily. The VP of engineering resigned before they could fire him. And the company? They still run my system. Still pay my invoices. Still need the guy they fired without reading a single line of the code that built their entire valuation. Revenge is easy when you know where the keystones are buried. I nodded slowly, letting the CTO finish his little speech about moving the company forward and removing legacy dependencies. He spoke with that tech bro bravado, hands waving, buzzwords firing like confetti, never realizing I had stopped listening the moment he said the words, "We've decided to terminate your employment effective immediately." I'd given this company 9 years. 9 years of building the architecture they bragged about in every investor deck. 9 years of patching, scaling, and stabilizing a system originally held together with duct tape and wishful thinking. 9 years of being on call every holiday because no one else knew the system end to end. And now they were firing me. Because I was too slow adapting to their new AI-driven innovation culture. Translation: they hired a 28-year-old CTO who thought rewriting the entire platform from scratch in 6 months was a realistic goal. He told me my low-level engineering style was outdated. That no modern company needed someone who understood the hardware stack. That my kind of engineering was from a different era. So when HR slid the offboarding packet across the table, I didn't argue. I didn't explain. I didn't defend myself. I simply asked one question: did you delete my code already? The CTO smirked. Actually smirked. We purged everything tied to old modules this morning. We're all in on the rebuild. Clean slate. Clean slate. He really had no idea what that meant. Okay, I said softly, standing up. Good luck. I didn't say anything else, not about the acquisition negotiations, not about the integration requirements, not about the compliance audits tied directly to the system I built. They fired me at 9:12 a.m. The acquisition team was scheduled to start their technical due diligence at noon. And I was the only living person who truly understood the architecture. The demo on Monday was supposed to be the crowning jewel of their $350 million acquisition: my platform, my architecture, my code. But on Friday at 4:12 p.m., while I was finalizing the last integration test, I got a curt Slack message from HR: please check your email. The email was shorter than a grocery receipt: effective immediately, your employment is terminated. All proprietary code you contributed has been archived and reassigned. Your system access has been revoked. They didn't even sign it. No meeting. No explanation. No courtesy. Just a digital execution followed by a system lockout. I stared at the screen, numb at first, then laughing. Actually laughing. Because they didn't delete my code. They deleted the visible parts. The surface. The skin. But the skeleton? The circulatory system? The core logic? They couldn't delete what they didn't know existed. And they didn't know, because I built the entire platform alone for 2 years while the CTO played visionary on LinkedIn and the engineering leads spent their days debating fonts in Slack. They thought they owned it. They thought they controlled it. They thought they could cut me out 2 days before the acquisition closed, present my work as theirs, and pocket the performance bonuses. But they had no idea the heartbeat of the system wasn't in the codebase at all. It was in the orchestration layer, the one only I knew existed. The one I held the keys to. And it was about to stop beating. I continued working as if I still belonged there, hands on the keyboard, eyes on the logs, while every executive in that building paced like they were waiting for a heart transplant to arrive by drone. The CTO kept glancing at me from across the room, pretending he wasn't sweating through his expensive shirt. He knew the truth better than anyone: the system they had spent months bragging about to investors, partners, and now a potential acquirer, none of it functioned without the core logic I'd written. Code they had deleted. Or rather, thought they deleted. They had erased my repository access, revoked my credentials, wiped my workstation, and replaced everything with shiny new code from a strategic offshore partner the COO claimed would modernize our technical footprint. What they didn't know, what they never bothered to learn, was that the heart of the system ran on a proprietary workflow engine I built myself. No documentation. No clones. No second brain to pick apart the way it worked. And thanks to one beautifully overlooked retention rule I wrote years ago, the engine still phoned home to an external audit server. My audit server. So when they pushed their acquisition build to the due diligence sandbox, the logs came straight to me. Every crash. Every missing dependency. Every call to a module that no longer existed. For 2 days I watched the errors pile up like snowdrifts, each one more catastrophic than the last. The acquirer's engineers asked question after question, polite at first, then tense, then openly concerned. The words systemic architecture instability and unreliable core functions appeared in their emails. Then came the fatal phrase, uninvestable risk exposure. That was it. The $350 million deal flatlined. And that's when the panic started. The CEO called an emergency meeting. The CTO tried to explain performance gaps he didn't understand. The COO blamed the offshore contractor. The head of product blamed the timeline. HR blamed transitional turbulence. Not one of them dared say my name, not yet. But they were all thinking it. Because deep down, even through the fog of arrogance and denial, they knew they had fired the only person capable of keeping the machine alive. By the time they finally reached out to me, it was too late. My inbox lit up with increasingly desperate attempts, first quick questions, then urgent alignment requests, and finally blatant "we'd love to discuss a potential reinstatement." I didn't answer. I waited. Instead, the acquirer contacted me directly. They had traced the system's architecture back to me. They wanted to understand why a multi-million-dollar platform depended on code written by a single engineer who was no longer with the company. And I told them the truth. I warned them they didn't understand what they were deleting. They asked if I could walk them through the architecture. I agreed, through a consulting contract with my own terms, my own rate, and more zeros than I had ever seen on a paycheck. Meanwhile, the company that had fired me was left holding the smoldering wreckage of its failed acquisition, its leadership suddenly facing a board that wanted answers, and blood. But that part? That wasn't my problem anymore. I didn't kill the deal. They did. I just built the system that exposed them. The next morning, headlines hit before anyone in the building even knew what had happened. Acquisition talks suspended after due diligence failure. Behind those sterile words was a far uglier truth, one the executive team was now scrambling to understand. By the time they figured out what went wrong, I was eating breakfast, watching the live stream of their emergency all-hands from the comfort of my kitchen. Someone had leaked the call link. Not me. People forget, employees talk when they're scared. The CEO looked like he hadn't slept. His tie was crooked, and his voice kept cracking as he spoke. We're experiencing unexpected technical issues. Our internal systems appear to have lost several critical services required for the acquisition handover. Lost? No. They deleted them. And because they didn't just delete code, they deleted me. They'd wiped the only architect with the keys to rebuild it. My modules weren't just programs, they were interlocking systems tethered to authentication chains only I understood. Not out of malice. Out of necessity. When you write the backbone of a platform over 8 years, every line becomes part of a labyrinth only the original builder can navigate. But management didn't see that. They saw a salary line they could cut. They saw old code they thought they could rewrite. They saw a shiny acquisition check and assumed everything beneath the surface would hold long enough for their victory lap. It didn't. Around noon, my phone buzzed, not with a call, but with a flood of messages from former teammates. They're begging legal to find your last backup. They're blaming IT for letting them delete your services. The CTO looks like he's going to faint. Dude, they mentioned hiring you back. And then, the message that made me laugh, HR is claiming you left voluntarily. LMAO. Sure. Voluntarily. After they escorted me out with 2 security guards and wiped my credentials before the elevator even hit the lobby. Around 3 p.m., my phone finally rang. Unknown number. But I knew exactly who it was. I answered anyway. A trembling voice, we believe you may have proprietary knowledge relevant to restoring certain systems integral to the acquisition timeline. I let the silence stretch. 10 seconds. 15. I could almost hear his heartbeat. I see, I finally said. And what exactly do you want from me? We'd like to extend an offer to consult, temporarily, just to help us bring the systems back online. The board is open to discussing appropriate compensation. Appropriate compensation. There it was. The thing executives say when they're bleeding and pretending not to. I didn't say yes. I didn't say no. I simply said, send the offer. If it's worth my time, we'll talk. When the email arrived, it was a joke, an embarrassing, insulting joke that would have gotten an intern fired for even typing it. So I made my own counteroffer. One line long, $50,000 per hour. Minimum 40 hours billed. Paid up front. I hit send and closed my laptop without waiting for a reply. By 6 p.m., another headline appeared, $350M acquisition dead after platform integrity fails review. Dead. Because they killed the one person who could keep it alive. And for the first time in months, I slept like a rock. By the following Monday, the news had spread through the industry like smoke through a vacuum line. The acquisition had collapsed. Not delayed. Not renegotiated. Dead. Every outlet, every analyst, every VC newsletter mentioned the same cause in quiet, careful language, technical integrity issues identified during final validation. No one said my name, because no one knew it. No one except the executives who now sat in their glass tower staring down at the ruins of the deal they'd bragged about for 8 months straight. They'd fired me at 9:42 a.m. on a Friday. Deleted my credentials at 9:43. Wiped my repositories at 9:44. And by 9:50, the architecture I'd built for 6 years, my modular runtime engine, my dependency maps, my integration scaffolding, was dead in the water. Not because I sabotaged it, not because I booby-trapped anything, but because they removed the only person who understood how it all worked. I had documented everything. Just not in the way they expected. The acquisition team spent the weekend trying to resurrect the codebase, but all they found were placeholders, stubs, and internal notes written for engineers who worked on my wavelength. Not executives who demanded rewrites in PowerPoint. They didn't know that what they deleted wasn't just code, it was the only map to the entire system. By the time the buyer's due diligence engineers checked the commits, they saw the truth immediately. This platform didn't exist without me. Not in any scalable, transferable, or sellable form. The buyers walked. The stock tanked. 3 executives retired early. And me? I spent the week sitting on a balcony overlooking the ocean at my new job, one that offered a signing bonus so large it still doesn't feel real. When they asked what finally pushed me to leave my old company, I told them the truth. They fired me and deleted my code. Turns out, that code was the only thing holding a $350 million deal together. My new CTO laughed. Their loss, he said. Our jackpot. Maybe so. But as I watched the sun dip into the water that evening, I couldn't help thinking about the last conversation I had with my old manager as security escorted me out. He'd smirked and said, "We'll be just fine without you." I guess everyone gets to be wrong once.